Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Swenguin Says. I'm your host, Kate, and I cannot believe I just said those words. This is my third time starting this intro, so I think we're just going to roll with it. Today we're going to be going over all the books that I read or did not finish in the month of November, which I've been meaning to do a book wrap-up, a monthly wrap-up for my channel for the longest time, but because it's you should make these at the end of the month theoretically. Every time I've always been so busy, and then by the time I get around to it, we're already halfway through the new month. So this time, because it's Thanksgiving break, I have the time to actually sit down and chat with you guys about all the books that I've read over this month. So on my list I have 10 books, but I DNF'd 3 of them, so technically I only read 7, not only, but I read 7 books this month. Excuse me. So looking at my list here, ooh, my shoulder just cracked. Looking at my list here, I think I would say that I had a pretty good reading month, actually. I'm really happy with the books that I read. Granted, some of them are rereads because I don't know if you guys do this, but usually what I do is that I'll read a new book and then afterwards I'll just I just want to reread a certain book. Sorry, let me back up. That's not making any sense. So usually what happens is that oh my gosh. So usually what happens is that I will read a new book and then afterwards I kind of just have this craving for a certain kind of book, and the reason why I'll reread a book is because I already know that this certain book has what I'm looking for. So you'll see some examples throughout the books that I talk about today, but I think we should just start with the first book that I read or finished this month, which was a book called A Desolation Called Peace by Arkady Martine. And this is the second book in a duology, I believe, called, hold on, let me pull it up, called Takes Kalan. And the first book I actually read in the previous month in October, and I really enjoyed it. It's about this ambassador named Mahit Dasmar, who is from a space station, and she is working as an ambassador representing her space station within the Takes Kalan Empire, I believe, or is it just called the Empire and Takes Kalan is she has to go into Takes Kalan, and she is replacing her predecessor, who was probably killed. And the interesting twist about this book is the fact that the people within the space station that Mahit is from, they have perfected this technology that allows you to upload your memories and being and then install them into other people. So the society, they're able to pass on knowledge and skills through people and through people. And so, for example, you'll have pilots, for example. When a pilot dies, they'll just take the upload of the person, I forget what it's called, and then they'll install it in a new pilot so that that new pilot will have all the knowledge and experiences that the previous pilot had. Now the issue with Mahit is that I swear, like, the word that for that technology is at the edge of my tongue, but I cannot for the life of me remember it. I'm so sorry. But for Mahit, her predecessor, the last time he uploaded his mind, I suppose, or his memories, was when he first became ambassador to Takes Kalan, which means that the memories that Mahit has from the previous ambassador, are very out of date, and we're not sure how useful they will be because we don't the first diplomat does not have enough information for us to really know who is a threat, and this upload does not go well apparently because there's something wrong with the hardware, and then the story just continues from there. We have problems. Mahit is in the Takes Clan Empire trying to figure out what happened to her predecessor, while also making sure that the Empire does not try to take over this space station, as is pretty likely to happen. And that was the first book, called A Memory Called Empire. The second book picks up from where we left off in the first book, because in the first book we had some kind of unresolved plot threads that I don't really want to talk about because it'll be a spoiler, but it involves aliens, I'll just go with it. And it involves aliens, and I would say that it was a solid read. It just felt like a sort of continuation of the first book, where we, like I said, pick up those threads and follow them through the second book. I don't really have much to say for or against this book because it wasn't worse than the first book in the best way possible. Like, it felt very much at the same level, but it definitely was not better. It was very consistent. I feel like everything that was going on happened very subtly. There wasn't a lot of flashy action scenes or loud outbursts of drama, and it focused more on politicking and navigating social rules, which I think was a lot of fun to explore. Overall, I think I would recommend reading this series if you're really into science fiction. It's definitely a very interesting concept, and I'm still so upset that I cannot remember what the name of that memory technology that they use is called. But let's move on to the next one. It'll probably come back to me at the end of this, and I'm going to be so upset. But the next book I read, this is what I was talking about with rereads, was Percy Jackson's Greek Gods by Rick Riordan. And I'm actually not sure when the last time I read this book was, but it definitely has been a while. And I would say that if you are a fan of Percy Jackson, like you've read all of the first series and the Heroes of Olympus series, then you definitely should read this book. I think this is definitely meant more for you. If you haven't, I wouldn't really recommend reading it just because it would probably be a little bit confusing. You probably would need to have some more familiarity of some of the famous Greek myths, either through the Percy Jackson books or through other means. And then there's also some references to other characters within the series that you may not catch, which may be annoying, or you just will probably get bored. Okay. Next, the next book I read, which I think is one of my favorite books of the year, to be honest, was called The Blighted Stars by Megan E. O'Keefe, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself reading this book. This was definitely a 5-star read for me. I thought that the plot lines were really well organized, given that there were multiple points of view spanning across different locations and moments in time. It was a really long book, but it didn't feel like a drag at all. There were lots of twists and turns, but it didn't feel like the author was just doing it for no reason, or they're just trying to drag you along for the ride. I think everything fit together really well, and it was paced just right. There's no fluff. We got to see how different plans and past actions influenced each other, as well as what consequences will follow and what responses these actions will generate. And I also really liked how consistent the characters were. So, for example, if they were smart, they would actually be smart. Like, you would really respect that kind of cleverness and intelligence that they were acting with. And then some of the parts of the book were so creepy and mildly disturbing that I had to actually refrain from reading this book at night, because otherwise I would be too freaked out to sleep. And it's really funny because while I was reading this book at night, I was for just to clarify, I actually lean more towards listening to audiobooks over reading the digital or paper version of books, just because in my day-to-day life I'm always looking at screens and stuff, and the last thing I want to do is just be using my eyes more and staring at stuff. So I would rather just listen to an audiobook while doing other stuff, like lying on my bed or something. And so when I was listening to this book at night while lying in my bed where it was dark, and then you're hearing about the misprints going on, oh, too creepy. I had to put the book down, and I instead started reading Welcome to the Hyunam-dong Bookshop, which I'll get to later. This reminds me I should talk about what this book was about. So this book follows two main characters, and the first one, his name is Tarquin, I believe. That's how they pronounced it in the audiobook. He is the son and heir of this, I want to say, family, where they are the miners of this really important resource that is used as basically the basis for everything within the human civilization. And he is trying to prove that despite other claims, his family's mining processes are not destroying the planets that they are mining on. And then on the other hand, the second character we have is, her name is Naira, and she is trying to prove that Tarquin's family, or she's basically an activist. She's saying that Tarquin's family, their mining methods are destroying worlds and harming society. So we have these two opposing views. And what happens during the book is that on this mining expedition that Tarquin and his father are heading on this planet, everything just goes wrong. Like, Naira, she actually worked for Tarquin's family and was basically the head of the family, Tarquin's father's bodyguard, and she betrayed them, and she ended up getting caught, and she was put on ice, quote unquote. And what this means is that within this book we have this concept called printing, where, again, similar to a memory called Empire and a desolation called Peace, you can basically upload yourself, and then in this book you can print yourself out into a new body. So it's kind of like a form of immortality. You upload yourself, print yourself into a new body, and then you can carry on your day if all things go right. But for Naira, when she got caught, they just uploaded her consciousness, I guess, and they just left her in the clouds. She's just stuck in the computer, I guess, if you could think of it that way. They're not going to print her out. But during this expedition, things go so wrong that she somehow ends up getting printed, and then we're following the book of, Tarquin and Naira trying to figure things out, what's going on. There are so many things that happen, it's kind of hard to explain, but I loved it so much because you can just see things like building, lots of little things happening, but they're all related somehow, and I thought it was just so cool. I'm at a loss for words. It was a really good book. I immediately put the second book on hold, and I'm hoping that it comes in, but the waitlist is months long, apparently. Yeah. So if you do read this book, I will just tell you that the whole thing with the einkorn, which is one of the ships and the misprinted, was very creepy, so that's the part that really freaked me out, especially while listening to this as an audiobook, so just be warned. Okay, now we'll talk about Welcome to the Hyunam-dong Bookshop by Hwang Bo-rum. Like I said, started reading this book while reading The Blighted Stars because I wanted to listen to something that I was 95% certain would not cause me to freak out right before going to sleep. And I was correct, it did not. This was a bit of a change from the previous books I've been reading for the month because, as you see, 2 out of the 3 books previous to this were science fiction, thoroughly science fiction books. But now I was reading some just contemporary fiction. And that said, I really enjoyed reading this book because the experiences and the thoughts the characters went through very much aligned to the questions that I've been asking myself as I've been transitioning into adulthood, and with my graduation coming up and just having to go out into the real world and exist and succeed. And while I still don't know the answers to a lot of the questions about the rat race, work, living a meaningful life that these characters and I have been asking, this book gave me a lot more insight and also validated some of my feelings. And it's nice to know that, I'm not the only one who struggles with these concerns. And really, I think this book deserves a reread just so that I can further process my feelings and thoughts. So if you find yourself also like you're in your early 20s, you're going to be graduating soon, or you're in this transition period of your life, I really think you should give this book a read just so that you can kind of explore and think through your feelings and sort of get a better gauge on how you want to live your life and what is important to you. Okay, next, I swung back to science fiction again. This time I read Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton, and I actually got this book recommendation from Carrie Conreys. If you guys watch my vlogs, you guys know I watch like a ton of her videos, but I got this book from Carrie Conreys, and the way she described it was that it's similar to Andy Weir's sense of humor and The Martian, but I actually have to disagree with her on that. I didn't think it was very similar. Granted, it was a bit funny and mildly entertaining at times, but it didn't really give me Andy Weir vibes, to be honest. I think when reading this book, you do sort of have to suspend your disbelief for a bit, because the premise of this book, it follows the life of Mickey. He is a part of this space expedition meant to colonize a planet, and his role is the expendable. So basically, he's the human test subject. He is the only member of the crew who's authorized to be... There's so many parallels between these books. He's the only member of his crew authorized, we'll just say, to be reprinted, or he just gets regenerated every time he dies, so that, the crew can test out their different planets and make sure that it is safe and habitable for humans. So in this case, what happens is that you're only supposed to print... I keep saying print because I'm still thinking in terms of the Blighted Stars, but you're only allowed to... I don't even remember what the term was in Mickey 7. We're just gonna have to roll with print. You can only reprint someone if they are confirmed dead. You're not allowed to have duplicates of people. So guess what happens in this book? We end up with two Mickeys by accident. We have Mickey 6 and Mickey 7. And both these Mickeys do not want to die. So they try going around that by... I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know. They just try to hide the fact that there's two of them. And to be honest with this book, you do have to suspend your disbelief for a bit, because I do think that the two Mickeys should have been caught way sooner than they actually were, even if they were only caught like after 2 days or something. To be honest, because it just the parameters they had just did not seem sustainable, and there was just a lot of obvious... I would think would be obvious, like, for example, Mickey 6 was injured, Mickey 7 was not, because he just came out of the tank. Mickey 7, apparently he comes out looking really emaciated, and he also has no memories of what Mickey 6 went through, especially because Mickey 6 was not uploading as frequently as he should have. Mickey 7's memories are pretty out of date. So that was it, but besides that, I wouldn't say that really harmed the book, because I still never really got bored of the book by the time it ended. It was a bit of a strange read, to be honest. It didn't have as strong of like we have a dire problem or something, because you kind of know that they're gonna get caught at some point. It's just because they're on a spaceship, you have limited rations. The Mickeys keep making mistakes that get their rations cut. Like, you're on a small ship with a small crew, everyone knows each other, you're going to get caught eventually. I was more curious to see how they would find their way out of the situation if possible. So I realized that I'm probably not really selling it, but I think it was a fun read. I wouldn't expect something with a lot of action and stuff, or something as complicated as the previous two science fiction books I've read this month. But I still think it was a solid read. Okay, next up in this month we have a series of DNFs, because two of these books I actually started reading way back in September, but I've just been so busy I wasn't able to really give it the attention that these books deserved, and by the time I got around to actually trying to sit down and read through them, I think it just had been too long. I've just been reading it too inconsistently that it just wasn't hitting anymore. And so the first of which we have is The Demon of Unrest by Erik Larson. So this book, I don't even remember what it's about. It follows, this is a nonfiction book about the Civil War, or at least the start of the Civil War, if I recall. That's the part that I read about. And the thing is, I've been trying to get more into nonfiction books, and Erik Larson is a good way to do that, because his stories focus on an event and it tells it like it's an actual novel, an actual story. I feel like in history class people are always saying like, oh, history, is so interesting because it's like a story, but then they proceed to teach it like it's just a list of facts that you need to memorize. And in this case, I feel like Erik Larson's books do a pretty good job of actually turning these facts, these experiences that the people living in this time had, into a consistent storyline. But in this case, for this book, it just was not clicking with me. I just was not very interested. I think because of the fact that I've been picking this book up and down for too long and too inconsistently, I was just getting mixed up with all the different details of what is going on and the different characters, because we have one storyline focusing on Lincoln and him becoming president, and then we also have the storyline focusing on the people in the Confederacy. And it felt like, just for me, just because I was picking up this book on and up and down for such short bursts of time across a long time period, it felt like there was just too much going on, where it had too big of a scope. But yeah, I felt like we had too big of a scope, and as a result I felt like things were moving really slowly, and I was getting pretty bored, and I wasn't really sure what we were building up to, because I wasn't sure if this book are we going to be just talking about leading up to the Civil War? Are we actually going to be covering the Civil War, or what? So unfortunately I did have to put that book down. I may circle back to it, but I'm not sure. And then the next book that I did not finish was 5 Broken Blades by Mai Corland. This was another book that I picked up because it was recommended by Carrie from Carrie Can Read. She said that it was similar to Six of Crows, and I was sold. I do love a good heist book, but for some reason, for this book, I just was not clicking with the writing style. It felt kind of choppy and jagged, and I wasn't very interested in the story or characters. I think that the chapters for each point of view felt too short, and it's just a personal preference for me. I'm not really a fan of books where the cast of main characters, or like the friend group, they all pair up romantically anymore. I think I used to be into that when I was younger, because I thought, oh, that's so cute and romantic, but now I'm just not. I think it's just been overdone for me, so I'm not interested, and I could kind of sense that was going to happen at some point down the line for this book. So it's just a lot of misses for this book, unfortunately. I think if it's good and you guys recommend it, I would like to give this book a second chance. I think actually it would be fun to just do a reading month where I kind of just do redemption books. So if there are any books that I did not finish or that I did not like that you guys think that I should reread, let me know, and I'll keep I'll keep a list, and hopefully we'll get back to it at a certain point in the future. Okay, then we have our last DNF, which was Challenger by Adam Higginbotham. This book, I was actually really excited for it. This is another nonfiction book. It is about. Oh, I just didn't talk about what Five Broken Blades was. Hold on, let's rewind. So, Five Broken Blades, as I've already hinted at, it's sort of a heist book. And what we have is these five. It's a 5-man band who. We have like the spy master, we have an assassin, the former prince, I believe, a thief, and someone else. I don't remember all the characters. Like I said, I was not very interested by the time I put this book down, and it's been so long I kind of forgot all the details. But they're going to try to kill the king, who is basically a god, apparently, because he has a crown that makes him, I don't know if it makes him immortal or something. I think it makes him immortal. And he's almost impossible to kill, but he's really cruel and violent, and it's time for him to go. It's time for him to go. So we're going to follow the part of the book that I left off at is when they're gathering the 5-man band, and then they're going to meet up at some point. I put down the book before they actually all met up, just because I just didn't want to force myself to keep reading. I could feel myself just kind of losing focus and mental energy. I think the term is reading slump. Like, I could feel like I was going to throw myself into a reading slump if I tried to force myself to read a book. That's also something about how when I approach reading, if I can feel myself like not liking the book or feeling some kind of resistance, I will put down the book and just not finish it. No matter how good people will say it is or how recommended it was, I prioritize my mental health over the potential, or like over the opinions of other people, if that makes sense. So I think what you'll see in a lot of my monthly wrap-ups, if I continue doing this, is that I will have like a lot of books where I will finish them, a lot of rereads. Those help keep me out of a reading slump, because if I want to keep reading something, I'll just read something that I know will hit. And then I also have a lot of DNFs, because if like I DNF pretty early on, to be honest. If it's like if I read like 10% of a book and then I just like I'm not interested, I don't really care, I'll just put it down. I don't think too hard about it. Which is why I would really be interested in doing a redemption series, I guess, because I know that I'm not reading most of the books, so I'm probably missing information where things build up, and maybe I am skipping out on some potentially really good reads. So like I said, if there are books that you think deserve a second chance, let me know and I will definitely give them another look. So back to Challenger. This book is talking about the Challenger disaster, and it talks about I didn't read enough of this book. I think this book I got like maybe 1% through or something, because it's talking about the Challenger disaster, which I was really excited to read because I love space stuff. So I was really excited for the opportunity to learn about space history, and I saw that this book had won an award. But for some reason, I just found it really boring. I was hoping for a book that focused more on the different challenges and setbacks we had to overcome during the process of building the vehicles and tools needed for these different missions that led up to Challenger, so that we can get, I guess, more information about how that disaster happened. But I think this book took a more macroscopic approach, where we got to learn more about how the bureaucracy and human folly kind of led to all these different mishaps, which I actually find it rather refreshing and pretty insightful, because it does subvert that image painted in our mind by the US government and NASA, that, you know, NASA is this place of innovation, cutting edge technology. It's like we're at the forefront of the space industry, But in reality, it's still a government agency that is run by people, and people are idiots. And yeah, because this is a bit of a tangent, but I do remember when I visited the Kennedy Space Center, it was like, it felt like going to Disney World, but like in the worst possible way, because they kept forcing you onto lines to watch these films about the lunar landing. And it sucks because I was like, space is really cool, the technology is really cool, but the Kennedy Space Center, it just felt like we just kept flaunting the one and only achievement that we have as a United States is going to the moon. I was kind of salty about that because I was thinking, couldn't we be talking more about the future endeavors of how are we going to get to Mars again? Or, not again, jeez, thinking too far ahead. How are we going to get to Mars? Or what are some other, like, you can talk about the commercial space industry if you wanted to, although it's probably against that probably does not align very much with their own motives to be talking about SpaceX and stuff. But I think they were just beating us over the head with, oh, we went to the moon, we were the first country to send a man to the moon, like that, and then we're going to be going again with the Artemis program. I was just thinking that maybe we should be thinking farther ahead, just beyond the moon, because we have a whole solar system. Like, we can't just do the moon. We've already done it. Why are we not trying something new? Why are we not innovating? But I'm going to stop myself there. That's my rant for now. It was just a very strange experience at the Kennedy Space Center, because they would literally just lock us in a room, force us to watch the projector of a short film about the moon landing every single time I went to a new exhibit. Okay. But that's why I'm trying to say that this book's approach to kind of just not shying away from revealing the ugly details of how some of these disasters or some of these failures were entirely preventable if people had been more careful, more thorough, and more cautious of what was going on. And it's just I was just so disappointed when I was not able to focus and actually read through this book. I think in the future, when I am more able to pay attention, I think have more free time, I'm going to try to come back to it. I may try to get a copy of the physical version from my library, because I think when all else fails, going back to the basics and, the good, what's it called, just the fundamentals is a good way to really get into a book. Okay, so I think in short, this just kind of shows how, even though I'm still trying to get more into reading nonfiction and history books in particular, I'm still at the point where I don't think I have the patience for hardcore history books like this one. I kind of need to have my hand held through it. You gotta make it more interesting, you gotta not dramatize it a little bit, but you have to add more information that makes it more dramatic for me. That was Challenger, and the next book, because I had 3 DNFs in a row and I could feel myself sliding into a reading slump, I decided to reread a book, which was Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, and this is one of my comfort reads. I go back to this book all the time. It's Howl's Moving Castle, Pride and Prejudice, and The Martian. Those are like and also Dune, which I'll talk about later. Those are like the 4 books that I always find myself returning to whenever I have either been read like an okay book, I've been just having trouble figuring out what I want to read next, I'll just go back to one of those 4 books. And in this case, I almost made a mistake by picking this book, which is something I never thought I would say. I wasn't sure what to read after finishing Making 7 and then DNFing the 3 books I just talked about. And I felt like I started reading this book a little bit, but then I put it down for a little bit as well, because I just realized that I needed to take a break from reading and listening to audiobooks for a bit. It was just too much stimulation going on. And then after a few days, I was able to pick this book back up where I left off. And before I continue, I should talk about what this book is about. Yes, the movie Howl's Moving Castle by Studio Ghibli is based off of this book rather loosely. There are some details from this book that are not carried over to the movie. And this book follows the life of Sophie Hatter, who lives in a world where it is the greatest misfortune to be born as the eldest sibling of 3. So, like me. And what happens is that she gets turned into an old lady by this woman known as the Witch of the Waste, and she ends up striking a bargain with Calcifer, who is the fire demon who lives in the heartless... Oh my gosh. He lives in the castle owned by the wizard Howl, who is known to have no heart. He is heartless, he steals girls' hearts, and Sophie has to kind of find her way to get herself freed from the curse through this bargain with Calcifer. And along the way, she learns more about what's going on with Howl and herself as well. Sorry, that was a bit of a messy synopsis, given that I've read this book so many times. I'm looking at my story graph, which is what I use to track my reading, and it says that I've read this book 4 times, and I still told quite a bad synopsis of what happens in the book. But I really love this book because it's like a cozy, whimsical fantasy book, and it's just very cute. It definitely is more... Yeah, the best way to describe it is that it is a very whimsical story. It is very cozy. I want to mention that even though I've listened to this book so many times, I still feel like there are details that are new to me each time. I think it's because having read the book so many times and knowing where things lead, you have a better idea or a better eye for the little details that you can see point to how the story ends. You can see how the things fit together more. So I think there is merit to rereading books. I'm really not sure how common of a practice it is for people to reread books, but I definitely do it quite frequently. Okay, so the next book I'm going to talk to... That didn't make sense. The next book I'm going to talk to you guys about is called Dune by Frank Herbert, and this was yet another reread. Dune is one of my favorite books ever. It has such a rich storyline with lots of little details that you need to pick up in order to understand the context of what's going on and the different character motivations. And one thing that I find interesting about this book is the fact that the author doesn't do a lot of direct explanations of how the world works, but instead he gives you just enough information for you to infer that information yourself. And I just realized I keep doing this. I am going to attempt to explain what this book is about, and this is going to be so hard because how Dune is written is that it has some time skips. It takes a bit of a macroscopic approach to the storyline. We're not just focusing on one character entirely. We have several characters, but they're all related to the same thing, I guess. I wasn't sure where I was going with that sentence. But I think I'm not even going to try to explain what the book is about. I think I'm just going to read you guys the blurb on Storygraph. So, set on the desert planet Arrakis, Dune is the story of the boy Paul Atreides, who would become the mysterious man known as Muad'Dib. He would avenge the traitor's plot against his noble family and would bring to fruition humankind's most ancient and unattainable dream. A stunning blend of adventure and mysticism, environmentalism, and politics, Dune won the first Nebula Award, shared the Hugo Award, and formed the basis of what is undoubtedly the grandest epic in science fiction. So I think that last sentence, or that last line, is probably the best way to describe the book. It is basically a grand epic. It's a sci-fi epic, so think of like Homer's Odyssey or the Iliad. This is same vibe. This is like an epic tale. And I know that this is a series with several books. I believe I've read most of them, but these books are so long, and I did try doing it back to back, which was a bit of a mistake because I just started kind of losing the thread. I think it was just too much Dune at once. So I do think that I'm going to slowly try to read through the rest of the series, even though I'm not sure if it's finished, but I do know that I believe the author, Frank Herbert's son, and someone, they tried continuing the series after his death, and I guess we'll see whether those books are any good. But so I think one thing I do want to talk about is that for the audiobook version that I listened to, it's kind of funny because they do have supposedly it's a full cast, but not really, because some chapters they would just use the default narrator, but then some chapters they would use the other voice actors to voice the characters, which was fine. It was a bit of a weird experience, but it was fine. The thing that was more strange was the fact that they were reusing some of the voice actors for kind of opposing characters that were in the same scene. So it kind of felt like they had like, oh, we have one voice actor for female Fremen, another voice actor for female noble like person, kind of like that. And the part that where it really confused me was actually in the last chapter, where you have Lady Jessica and Princess Irulan talking to each other, and they are on opposing sides of what is going on. So having the same voice actress cover both, I wasn't sure who was talking, and I was it was a bit confusing, I'll just say that. But that rarely happened throughout the book. It was fine. I think I was too busy getting focused on what was going on. And this is also another book that I've read multiple times, also 4 times apparently, and every time I'm still picking up on new details and stuff. I don't know if this means I just don't pay attention or something. I like to believe it just means that I'm getting a deeper understanding of the story and the world that the story takes place in. Excuse me, my voice is getting tired from talking for so long, but this is so fun. I don't think I have much else to say about Dune, to be honest. I'm thinking that since I'm just on the roll with science fiction, I kind of want to reread Foundation by Isaac Asimov, because that is also another really good science fiction series that I would recommend to you. It has a similar vibe to Dune, where you're following a story that spans multiple years across human civilization. That is how wide of a scope this book has, both Dune and Foundation. I would say that the Foundation series individual books are a lot shorter. I have not finished the Foundation series yet, actually. The more I'm talking about this, the more I'm thinking that I do want to try to finish it. I'm going to double check how many books are in that series. I believe I've read the first 3, the original trilogy, but I've yet to finish. And this one is just also another interesting concept where we follow the Foundation, which was created by this, I forgot what his name is, psychohistorian, the leading psychohistorian named Harry Seldon, who, using psychohistory, which is basically the statistical analysis of huge groups of people, I believe, he foretold, using those numbers, that the human civilization was on the verge of, not on the verge, they're going to enter a dark age, essentially. And in order to minimize the length of that dark age and ensure that humanity, the progress continues, he created the Foundation as a way to counteract that. And that's what this series is following. We're following the development and establishment of the Foundation trying to fend off other other planets or kingdoms trying to take over them or threatening them. And then where I left off, I believe, is when they start getting into the second Foundation, because there were 2 that were established, which is not a spoiler because we do talk about that in the first book, but we kind of just end up forgetting about it for a little bit. So yeah, I think that's probably what I'm going to be reading later on this month. Currently, right now, I have been reading Steve Jobs, that biography by Walter Isaacson. And then also for school, I've been reading Jim Henson, the biography by Brian J. Jones. And then I also have been trying to read The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. And I also started J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, but I'm not sure. I'm not really actively reading right now because I have 3 other books that I'm reading, and I think those other 3 are more of a priority at this point. I may spend time reading Lord of the Rings during winter break, perhaps, when I do have more time. So yeah, those were all the books that I read or DNF'd for this month. I hope that despite my rather messy explanations of what these books are about, you found something that catches your eye, or maybe you've already read some of the books. Feel free to let me know what your thoughts were, what redemption books I are on this list, and I hope that you have sorry, I've been talking for too long and I don't remember what I was saying, but I hope that you had fun listening to me kind of just talk about some of the books that I really enjoyed this month, some of the books that I didn't really enjoy. I hope you found books that maybe that you would like to read. If you have any recommendations or redemption books for me, feel free to let me know. I will take a note of them. And yeah, I hope you guys have a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you guys have a cozy, stay warm, have a cozy winter, get ready for the holiday season. I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye.
Alright, hello everyone. I decided to do something fun where we have a little bonus segment at the end of each episode. And for this segment, I'm thinking that I'm going to read a little blurb for a book that I recommend for the month, and to talk a little bit about why I liked it and why I recommend it. I'm not sure if this will be what I do at the end of every episode or not. Like, I don't know if I'll just do a book recommendation or maybe answer questions that you guys may have. I feel like that would be fun too. But that's for later. Let's just talk about the book that I have for today. So, the book that I've chosen is, well, some context first. Since November is the month where we have Thanksgiving, I figured that I would choose a book that makes you really think about and reflect on the things that you're grateful for in your life. And as such, the book I chose was What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Aoyama. And here's what the synopsis is, according to the Storygraph. Library. What a nice sounding word. So comforting. I feel like I'm a student again. Library. Am I allowed to borrow books? What are you looking for? Asks Tokyo's most enigmatic librarian, Sayuri Komachi. She is no ordinary librarian. Naturally, she has read every book on her shelf, but she also has the unique ability to read the souls of anyone who walks through her door. Sensing exactly what they're looking for in life, she provides just the book recommendation they never knew they needed to help them find it. Every borrower in her library is at a different crossroads, from the restless retail agent, can she ever get out of a dead-end job, to the juggling new mother who dreams of becoming a magazine editor, and the meticulous accountant who yearns to own an antique store. The surprise book Komachi lends to each will have transformative consequences. Magical and uplifting, What You Are Looking For in the Library is about the wondrousness of libraries and the power of books for change, highlighting all the tiny comforts of being broken up by each person that comes into the library, and we get a little short story about each, and with each one you had a little lesson to learn that I felt was super meaningful. In the end, the book was very comforting and heartwarming, as well as inspiring to read about. Just one thing that I do want to note is that for each story, it was a little bit annoying to hear the same description of the librarian over and over again, particularly in regards to her physical appearance and the cookie tin that she uses to store her felting supplies. So if you were to read this, I would probably just read one story at a time and take breaks in between, or at least just skip over the parts where we're having the main character for the current short story meet the librarian for the first time. That said, I really recommend that you give this book a try, and let me know what you guys think. That's all I have for today. Thanks so much for listening to the end.